Ace Combat, Shattered Electrosphere, Mission 1, Awakening, 10:54 p.m., April 13th, 2040, Expo City, Uja. It started with darkness. The super efficient and often fanciful lighting of Expo City's clean and sleek white skyscrapers suddenly cut off. The warmly lit, winding pathways of the city's expansive parks went dark all at once. The most secure location on the planet, the new United Nations bunker under the city's airport, was immersed in pitch black. The facility's building-sized exterior doors halted with a resounding thum, leaving them only partially closed. From the air, it was clear something had gone eerily wrong, but the true extent of the disaster had yet to unfold. 4 miles up, a pilot had just entered a holding pattern above the bustling metropolis when the city lights beneath his C5A Galaxy Plus vanished. He blinked, not believing his eyes, and then the navigation lights of the 787 a few miles ahead of him in the pattern vanished. In the next moment, the various displays of the partially modernized C5's cockpit flashed an intense white, and then went completely dark. The pilot, a grizzled old hand with weathered olive skin and silver hair, immediately felt the controls get significantly heavier. His eyes widened as the stars out of the Galaxy Plus's windshield began flowing downward as the roughly city block-sized heavy transport pitched up, uncommanded. He slammed the yoke forward, but while this slowed how fast the Galaxy was vertically swapping ends, it caused the stars flowing past the windshield to stop when only stars could be seen out of the window. The C5 was now completely vertical. Still traveling forward at several hundred miles an hour, the entire cargo jet became an air brake, effectively pulling a cobra maneuver. The pilot was thrust into the seat bottom as he heard the ancient aircraft structure groan, moments from being ripped apart. By sheer luck, the Galaxy Plus's carbon nanotube reinforced wing and wing box held, though the enormous aero forces that attempted to wrench the aluminum alloy wings off the jet did permanently bend them upward 2 degrees. The pilot felt the G's lessen and stop before suddenly going weightless as the craft dropped out of the sky, tail first. The pilot grimaced, but this was far from the first impossible situation he dealt with in half a century of flying. And I'll be damned if I go out flying a mule, he decided silently. That's when he realized that the engines had died, and right as he mused that the mule was actively trying to kill him, he was slammed by a sledgehammer of chest pain. The pilot tried to scream in agony, but couldn't draw breath. His pacemaker, a high-end General Resource medical model, had stopped, just like the Galaxy's engine control computers. For several eternal seconds, the septuagenarian expert pilot had his first experience in decades with true helplessness as panic threatened to overwhelm him. The wispy cloud layer 2 miles above Expo City whipped past and accelerated away from the windshield as the Galaxy plummeted. The pilot gritted his teeth and steeled every unit of willpower he had. I will not die here! Forcing an excruciating breath and then another, he noted that the derelict C5 was somehow completely stable, not rolling or tumbling. The pilot eased the yoke to the left, and the Galaxy gently began to roll before ceasing as he brought the control back to neutral. He pulled the yoke slightly toward him, screeching out a pained grunt as his chest still felt like it was on fire, and the huge transport gently pitched. As he began to let up on the yoke and the Galaxy Plus settled back into its death dive, the pilot realized exactly what had happened. It wasn't an enemy attack, at least not a conventional one. The airframe was still completely in one piece, despite the Cobra maneuver certainly weakening the wings. This particular C-5 was a literally half-century-old ex-Yuktobanian Air Force bird, mildly refreshed a decade ago by an aftermarket company that was already bankrupt. While the refresh added structural strengthening and a mostly glass cockpit instrument setup, the biggest change had been a surprisingly trick fly-by-wire system, the best Newcom had in the early 30s. The system added safety margin, but could also fly an incredibly unstable aircraft straight and level, just like the FBW systems on modern fighters. Naturally, the craft's owner and lazy loadmaster abused this when loading the Galaxy Plus for this flight, parking a heavy military truck at the very back of the cargo bay while lightweight supercars were all parked in front. The fact that the pilot's life was now in danger, because the loadmasters hadn't cared to arrange a general resource middle manager's car collection correctly, didn't cross the aviator's mind. But he now had a plan. Because the vast majority of the cargo weight was in the rear, the plane wanted to fly backwards. All the pilot had to do, he surmised through the throes of a heart attack, was dump the cargo. He was lucky the jet was so ancient that it still had mechanical backups for control. He knew the lazy loadmaster had used the same relatively weak tie-downs for the heavy truck as he had for the supercars. As a pitch-black ground appeared out of the side cockpit windows, rushing upwards from behind the Galaxy, the pilot slammed the flap lever to full flaps down and lowered the landing gear. The gear only partially deployed as the Galaxy Plus's computer systems were tasked with rotating them face forward, but an immense amount of extra drag was suddenly applied to the falling craft. With a grunt that became a shout of pain, the pilot slammed the yoke forward, waited for the Galaxy to pitch, and then wrenched the control back into his chest. The heavy truck's tie-down snapped, and 50,000 pounds of loaded HIMMET fuel truck surged backwards, smashing past the folded rear cargo ramp before bursting out of the clamshell cargo doors. The pilot roared with pain and purpose, control yoke still pulled to his chest as the starry sky flowed upwards past the windshield, replaced by the eerily dark void of the powerless Expo City. As the craft got close to level, the pilot slammed the yoke all the way forwards, forcing the nose down in an aerobatic feat never performed in the Galaxy's history. The grizzled aviator pushed the yoke back to neutral and felt the massive craft picking up speed, preparing to pull out of the dive. Then the HIMMET hit the ground, erupting in a fireball barely 1,000 feet from the radome of a nose-diving C5. It had hit a parking lot between two apartment buildings, and the pilot's face twisted into horror as he realized he was close enough to the ground to know the makes and models of the cars he'd inadvertently bombed. Once again the yoke was in his chest, but as the fireball faded, all he could see was void and shadow. The wings groaned once again as yet more abusive G-force was thrown against them, but just as the void seemed like it would swallow the Galaxy, the stars appeared on the horizon. The pilot exhaled, and was suddenly reminded by what felt like a stake to the chest that he was still having a heart attack. Then, the void reached out. A massive black shape appeared out of the horizon, one of the city's larger skyscrapers. In a panic, the C5's pilot slammed the rudder pedals while twisting and pulling on the yoke. The darkened skyscraper moved to the left and flashed past the cockpit port side window just before a hideous crunch reverberated through the airframe. The C5 somehow kept flying, but its left wingtip was now embedded into the towering building's 51st floor as the cargo jet left it behind. Still groaning in agony himself, the pilot suddenly realized something. Parking lot between two squat apartment buildings. Big rectangular office building. He knew this neighborhood, because it was where the airport was. He'd seen those buildings many times before, day and night on approach. As the engineless C5A Plus glided ever lower to the ground, he surmised where New Ark Airport must be and gently turned the aircraft. There it was, demarcated by the only set of lights on in the entire city, a ghostly set of constant red points hovering in the void. He had the speed to get there. He just needed one last gentle turn. If it weren't for his fighter pilot past, he never would have seen the black shape flashing past the stars from 3 o'clock high. The pilot slammed the yoke and rudder pedals again, barely missing the 787 he'd been following in the holding pattern 90 seconds earlier as it spun into the ground, punching through the edge of a stool-shaped building before hitting the ground in a fireball. Ah! The Galaxy's pilot grimaced, twisting the yoke back as gingerly as he could to line up with the runway as the C5 passed over its nearest end. Somehow, the wing held, until it didn't. Just before the Galaxy's still perpendicular wheels touched down, the weakened left wing gave way at the ring root, and the entire city block-sized cargo jet rolled hard left, its remaining wing pointing skyward as it hit the ground. The sick sound of metal grinding on pavement filled the cockpit as the massive craft ground down the runway, showers of sparks flying for several seconds, lighting fires amongst the craft's punctured fuel tanks. Finally, the galaxy screeched to a halt, partially in flames. The pilot smiled for just a moment before going into shock, a single thought on his mind. Didn't die. Doctor, where's my squadron? The pilot heard a distant young woman's voice ask. His eyes slowly came open. The room was dark, only illuminated by the eerie green glow of decades-old military-grade medical equipment. He was barely lucid enough to realize that there was a heavy pause before the doctor responded. I'm sorry, Fiona. Neither Eric or Reyna made it. Silence followed. Then a weak, teary, confused mumble. This isn't how it should be. The pilot's vision began to clear. He was wearing a hospital gown and was feeling fine, though somewhat woozy. He turned in his recovery bed to see another like it a few feet away, occupied by a brunette in her mid-20s, sporting a modern white flight suit. The doctor standing beside her noticed the Galaxy's pilot move and gave a sympathetic look at Fiona before walking to the older pilot's bedside. Welcome to the Universal Peace Enforcement Organization's headquarters. You crash-landed at Newark Airport with a borked pacemaker no less, but you'll be alright. The pilot realized the doctor had a clipboard in his hands. When's the last time he'd seen anyone with a clipboard? The doctor took a pencil from under the board's clip and scribbled something down before looking back up at the pilot. Would you mind telling me your name? The pilot's mind suddenly cleared as it went into tactical mode. He had just crashed into the most secure facility on the planet, likely destroying the prized personal property of a megacorporation's executive in the process. Both telling the whole truth and telling a complete lie could easily land him behind bars. He decided to use a name he hadn't gone by in almost half a century. My name is Cypher. Next time on Shattered Electrosphere, Cypher and Fiona must work together to stop an incoming bomber raid, with a museum-piece early jet fighter that's as much of a danger to its pilots as it is to the enemy.